Good afternoon to everyone. My name is Abhijan. I am actually using two affiliations here. One is the affiliation of working as a scientist in network embedded robotics research, in thesis research. The other one is not really ISOC, though I'm a member of that, but as a simple volunteer who is working towards this development of kind of this revolutionize this concept of standardization in India. So I'll present I have two presentations. The first one, I'm using my company template because whatever I have achieved, I wouldn't have achieved if my company wouldn't have supported me. The next presentation will be on a blank template because those are essentially my thoughts, and I don't want to attribute to ISOC or my company. So those are basically my studies on how things are moving in some direction. Okay, so what I'm necessarily going to talk about is about an achievement that we had recently last year in 2016, August 2016, we got the official notification. So why I say indigenous, I'll come to that. Why I'm stressing on this indigenous factor, though to make an ITF standard you need not be indigenous in a sense that we are saying here. So I'll touch upon the some of the nuances of ITF standardization, how things work there. But since already Anand and Liju, they have already given a brief background on ITF proceedings and all these things, how it works. So let me first start with what we have done, and then I have a few slides in this presentation only, which will discuss on the ITF mechanism and some of my experiences. So what we essentially achieved is that in the domain of IoT, essentially what CDAC presented here, that was also in the domain of IoT. We contributed something. A new protocol has come into the space, which is not unlike HTTP, because HTTP is the internet, you can say so, because this is the de facto standard which we all use while browsing internet, while doing e-commerce and all loads of services. Now for IoT, things are a little bit different, because with Internet of Things, the idea is that conventionally, the web was essentially a human-to-human interaction, right? So the provider of the content to the web is a human, and the consumer of the content of the web is also a human. I mean, maybe you are accessing some resources in some website, some e-commerce website, but all the details have been put by a human, and I, being a human, I'm accessing that data. Now that interaction model got challenged. Even Facebook, Twitter, all these are all human interaction, right? So human is the biggest. Human is the main producer of the data and main consumer of the data. Now with IoT, things got a little bit shifted. The paradigm got a little bit shifted, because in IoT, what we talk about are essentially things. Or the other term, parallel term to IoT, is machine to machine. Now you can argue that what is the big deal, because to access the internet or to transfer the data in a digitized manner, you can do only through machines, right? So it is basically an interaction between few computers. So that is also machine to machine. But the interpretation of machine when we talk about IoT or when we talk about M2M is a little bit different. It is that when you are using your machine to access the internet, or when you are using your machine to generate the data for the internet that someone else will access, you are the producer of the content. You are thinking about the information and you are producing that information. In case of IoT, the machine itself is thinking about the content and producing the information. And it is the machine who is actually using or interpreting that content and actuating. That is the difference. So, it is, you can say that it is a precursor to autonomous machine-driven internet, okay? And these machines, in most of the cases, are not big machines. They are sensors. So thanks to miniaturization of devices, right? So we have got sensors which can be equipped with wireless communication. It may connect over the, you can put a SIM into it. It can connect to the base stations, or it can connect over several other communication mechanisms, starting from Wi-Fi to ZigBee, like the 15.4 and Bluetooth, and there are several other standards, Bluetooth LE and all these things. Now what happens is the pattern of interaction becomes suddenly different. It is not that the conventional idea is that you have big amount of data, you want to stream loads of videos and audios and high definition and all these things. But in most of the use cases for IoT, what is important is not the volume of the data. It is all small data, the sensor sending some temperature information or some pressure information or some GPS locations or like that. But the data is going to come in a volume. So there may be sudden outburst, okay, of data generation. For example, suppose you have got several fire sensors in a jungle, in a forest, and the forest catches a fire. So there will be these numerous sensors generating an alarm, okay? Because if it is spread all across the forest, so we need to have certain architecture. We need to take certain architectural decisions, and also we need to see whether the existing protocols that made internet a reality is sufficient, okay? And that is the challenge. Now, ITF being the pivotal organization which runs the, because of which actually internet has become internet, the internet we use today, took this up, and over several layers they had several solutions. For example, what CTEC is doing, 6-ish, that is also a solution at a much lower layer. Now, the other idea was that just like HTTP is used to access web services in machines. So when you are using, say, when you are actually hitting some Wikipedia page, or when you are actually hitting some e-commerce site, you are actually using a service on some certain server. So there is a client-server relationship. Now, whether that kind of interaction can be modeled for these sensors. Now, what is so special? Why I need to think about it? Because these settings, these network entities, they have a typical constraint. These constraints can be broadly classified into 3 items. Okay, one is memory constraint can be there, or processing power constraint can be there because they are tiny devices. The other one is energy, okay, because they will be mostly battery operated, and they are kind of, you install them and forget, right? So maybe, as I say, that if we had sufficient amount of mudslide, a sensor which could detect the possibility of mudslide, probably we could have avoided the disaster in Uttarakhand, right? It was a huge landslide in many places, and it was devastating. We didn't have this infrastructure. But in such settings, what would happen? You would put the sensors in some strategic locations, and you'll not go every day to check the battery, right? Maybe after a few years, or after a few months, you will go and change the battery. Okay. And the other thing is the network constraint, because in most of the cases, if you go for the like 3G and all this communication, of course this is the reality, but you know, LTE or 3G, even 3G I think is more power hungry than LTE. So these communications, right? So they will drain out power. At the same time, you may decide to go for some narrowband communication, and the devices will be placed, or the sensors will be placed at certain places where the property of the radio that is connecting you to the infrastructure, that may get severely hampered, because there may be intermittence of connection, because of repetitive shadow, because you know, you can't predict. It is not a fixed infrastructure. So you put in some trees, maybe the sensors, right? So what will go what will be the environment outside? You may not always predict. So the radio environment is also going to change. And that is the fundamental thing, right? You start to digitize your data, and then you are actually sending over the radio. So what we have is the network constraints, bandwidth constraints, and also your infrastructure has to handle all the data. So these are the three constraints. So one is processing power constraint. Memory, still we are doing quite good. Processing power constraint. The other one is energy constraint. And the third one is network bandwidth constraint. So whenever you are designing a solution over the protocol stack, so it is a horizontal thing that you have to think about. Because if you look at the protocol stack, you have application, you have the actual information that is coming from your application, right? And that is then going to the lower below it. I'm for the time being, I'm not considering security, but it is coming to the transport layer. So transport layer will have its own interactions, okay? And that any interaction that is not sending the data, actual information, is over it, okay? This is not the information that is you want to send. This is only to keep the settings so that you can transfer the information. And also every layer, so after transport there will be routing layer, there will be MAC, then physical layer. Every layer will add its own overhead, its own additional number of header bytes, so that will actually increase the size of the data. So when you are creating any solution, any protocol solution, you have to actually think of this whole chain. What is increasing your size of the data? What is the end data that you want to send? Now, the more number of bits that you want to pump to the radio layer, right? That means that more number of number crunching, that more amount of number crunching, so it is directly proportional, you have to do at the signal processing unit at the bottom, and fundamentally that will impact your energy also. So it is at the same time, it is killing your bandwidth, because more number of data you have to send, more bandwidth you need, okay? And more entities you come together to send simultaneously, it becomes multiplicative, okay? And the more amount of number crunching you want to do, the more energy you lose, because the processor has to work. Now, it is a given, or it is a fixed convention that in any system, most of the energy that you lose while working in such communication systems is when you are transmitting the data. 50% of the energy is gone not for computation but for transmission of data. I'm not considering the energy required to lit up the LEDs, because in sensors you do not have such displays. I mean, let us not compare with our mobile phone, because in mobile phone sometimes you have these big screens and you have to lit up those screens, and so some energy is given there. So with that background, let us discuss what our contribution was. So what was used to kind of come up with a parallel of HTTP, because there are numerous literatures which started to say that HTTP, which we have been using for conventional web, is not fitting into the groove of IoT. Considering the constraints of these devices, it is not fitting well. So if I try to do HTTP over TCP, okay, that is the norm. So you have HTTP, then you have TCP IP layer. That is the norm. So if I try to do it on top using HTTP, my network stalls. I don't get a response in time, and in many cases I'm not able to meet the quality of service. So the IETF, there is a working group called CORE, Constrained Restful Environment. So RESTful is representational state transfer, which is like you might have heard about this put, post, get, delete, these HTTP methods. So it's a paradigm of how you create your requests and you get your responses, right? And conceiving everything like a resource residing on a server, and I'm just going and accessing that server and getting its current state, getting the data like that. So that RESTful mechanism has to be deployed for IoT devices, and that all in application layer. So in that, we were actually working on a use case of transferring GPS location to track vehicles. It was something like our internal project to track the position of office vehicles who are commuting with their with our colleagues. So so they deployed a system with conventional HTTP and TCP and all these things. So buses were equipped with battery connected sensors who were transmitting the GPS data, and they were all enabled with a GPRS chip, 2G, 2.5G chip, 2.5G SIM. But it was not performing as expected. So we took up the whole system and we tried to see whether we can improve on that. And then this protocol, it was way back in 2012, okay? End of 2012, it was, the protocol was in its nascent stage. So it was just being developed. And this is the time when we found that, okay, so this is the first time we are encountering a situation where a protocol is not yet standard, but I can get the open source implementations, I can tweak the codes, many universities are contributing. So this was kind of an eye-opener. So this use case actually opened our eyes. And also we found that anybody can actually be part of it. Anyway, so when we started with QA, we found that yes, we can definitely improve the performance. But what we found is that still there were some glitches depending on our use case, and there is a further scope of improvement. The further scope of improvement was like, so there were scopes to improve on the delay performance, and to improve on the server load that is there. Okay, so or if you are sending to a cloud, or if you are sending to, so all the vehicles in the city. So how can you actually optimize the amount of data? Despite reliable, there has to be a trade-off between reliable transfer of data and also delay performance and also your reduced server load. Okay, it was a typical IoT use case. So I don't want to go into all the details. If you are interested, the link is given. You can go to the link. We can discuss on it. you can get my email ID, so we can have all the discussions and everything. We had a solution involved around it. Now, so we published. First time we submitted the draft in 2013 November. Okay, and we had to have some kind of perseverance, patience. We had to take some toil to get it finally mature as an RFC in 2016 August. So almost 3 years. Okay, 3 years. Now, why indigenous? Because all the authors from, now let me go to the next slide. So what you see is the page 1, which describes the abstract, which is essentially the use case we are going to address, and page number 17. So it is a 17-page draft with the last page containing only the acknowledgements and the authors. Now, if you look at the list of the authors, so they're all not Indian. I'm not stressing on the factor Indian, but they all work for an organization which is rooted in India. We really did not collaborate. It is. I'm not saying that it is forbidden to collaborate. Definitely you should collaborate. But yeah, I mean, we did it this way. So yeah, we can say that it is India's first indigenous RFC. Okay, generating out of not so vibrant technologically, not considered not so vibrant technologically. That is the eastern part of the India, which does not figure in the map. Because every time I went to ITM meeting and I used to say that I have a draft, people used to say, okay, which part of Bangalore you live in? So I said, no, I don't live in Bangalore. I live in Kolkata. Okay, you are from Kolkata. You are Bengali. I understand. But which part of Bangalore you live in? I said, no, don't get me wrong. I work in Kolkata. Anyway, so I think I have already discussed these things, right? So I'm not going into this one. Now, this is the typical setup that I used. If you don't like the interior of the car, the fault is mine, because it is the interior of my car, my own car. And actually this orange color, these towels, right? So I got good support from one person from Netherlands. He said that, hey, this looks like our jersey. I mean, are you a fan of Netherlands? I said, why you are saying that? This looks like our football team jersey. I said, no, okay, that's good. But anyway, so this is the setup. If you can see, do I have a laser torch over here? Do I have a laser torch over here? Pointed. No. Oh, so. Okay, leave it. So what you see right on the left corner is the sensor, okay? It is connected to the car battery there, okay? And it has got a GPS antenna which is put on the dashboard, right? And there is a SIM inserted, a Vodafone, it was a Vodafone SIM inserted. And there is a photon, so that little laptop is my server, okay, where the data is coming, right? And this big laptop is actually a console to the gateway, just to check that whether everything is happening properly, okay. So what we used to do is, this photon did not ensure much speed, okay, much bandwidth. Neither did the SIM that we had. So essentially we had configured something like a constrained network, a network with not too much of bandwidth, okay. So the bandwidth constraint was imposed this way. That was a practical way of doing things. And then what we used to do, lunchtime we used to take our car, I used to take my car. So these laptops used to be handed over to my colleagues sitting on the back, and I used to drive the car all through the roads, and also at different times, just to check how the system is performing. So maybe sometimes we used to go out during the lunch hour, okay? And that time it is not, it is a kind of off time, okay? So the network load will not be too much in that area because we used to go to some township that was being built. Now then, again, we used to roam around, we take our car just when the people are actually moving out from home. So that time, these networks are actually going through too much of traffic, right? So how is it, so are we having any losses? What is the percentage of data that I can reliably receive? So we did an analysis. We published that in Mobiquitous. And so what we found is that we had a decent trade-off. Okay, we made a decent trade-off that was to the advantage of the overall throughput of the system, of the overall network throughput of the system, without losing much of the reliability. Okay, and then.
Excuse me, Abhijan, actually we can use the middle button.
Oh, the middle button, right? Oh, good. Thanks. So then, what we did. This is actually the road I had to travel. So I'll pause here for a moment and I'll describe. So let me straight go over here. This is Paris, March 2012. Okay, I just started with. I just learned that there is something. Okay, IETF I learned in my textbooks, but yes, there is something. It is such an open thing where anyone can contribute, any person, any individual, which doesn't work on organizational membership basis, but on an individual basis. So I went to Paris, March 2012, just to see, so what is it? And I was eager to see that yes, some protocol for tomorrow is being developed, which many industry is supporting, which is actually competing with some of the proprietary products like IBM, MQTT, and all these things. Let me just go and see how things happen. And you won't believe me, I was scared. When the first day, when I saw everywhere, I mean, gigs sitting everywhere, sitting on the carpet, the protocol is being developed just by sitting on the carpet discussing, and they are writing codes. They are writing real codes which will go to some router or some product someday, and I was actually witnessing some technology for future which maybe I will use or the world will use is being actually created there. So people scribbling on the papers. What is essentially is if there is no nonsense talk, mostly. Everybody is busy implementing things that not only he would like to use, the world would like to use. Okay, working system that will connect the whole globe, and it was exciting and scary at the same time. So I considered myself a tremendous amount of the sense of misfit. It crept in my mind. Am I capable of doing this? I am an engineer. They are also an engineer. Okay, they are also engineers. But then slowly, I started to interact with people. Mostly, I identified some of the working groups that were of interest to me. Of course, core was one of the working group. And what I found is that when you have the depth of knowledge, there is a inverse proportional. The way you bend to people and the way you interact with people, this also increases. So there are some beautiful, nice people I interacted who were actually developing stuffs. I could approach anyone and I could put questions, and whatever they are doing, they will pause and they will answer my query. And to be very honest, something went into my mind, and I thought that someday I have to come back here, but with a purpose. Okay. By that time, we didn't develop anything. Okay, we were just using a protocol being developed. We were just using some open source code. So I could actually meet the person who was developing. Right? His name is Olaf Bergman. He is a PhD scholar from University of Bremen. And I just told him that I found that there is this problem. Oh, is it? And he literally sat beside me, opened the code, and it was rigorous C programming going on. So should we put this variable over here? Should we put this variable over there? And that is what essentially Anand was saying. Some lines of codes that was actually getting standardized. We don't think this way, right? So by middle of 2013, right, we had this draft submitted, and we got some good reactions from the chair. So my company said, okay, go see if you can defend it. And so what happened is that working group, the motion of the working group mostly was that, yes, this was something that we were really looking for, and this is something really required for constraint devices. And most of the appreciations came from Philips Light. Okay, you see the connected lights coming in the market today, right? So the lights, they have some web services going in their lights, which you, remotely, geographically from a different location, you can tell the light to change its hue. You can tell the light to switch on. You can tell the light to switch off. You can tell the light to dim. All those kind of stuff, and that happens through some web service calls in that light. And so what they came up with is, they said that your solution is very apt for us to debug in multicast environment when we switch on all the lights in a building. So what it essentially enabled is that, so you have your mobile phone, you say switch on the lights on this whole auditorium, okay, or this whole building. What will happen is all the lights will then start responding, because that is how RESTful protocols work. So you say a post or a put, and it will start responding that yes, okay, or just like HTTP okay, or HTTP not found, HTTP forbidden. You get all these responses, right? So what our protocol enabled is that it gave certain hooks so that you could intelligently tell the client whether to send that kind of response or not, whether you need that kind of response. And that saves a lot of bandwidth. Imagine hundreds of lights simultaneously getting switched on, and they're all sending you the responses. You can, through our protocol, you can actually tell the server, the lights are becoming the server, right? That you don't respond unless you have got something wrong, or you don't respond if you are wrong, then you don't respond, but if you are right, you respond. So anything is possible. You can get more details about it when you go through the draft. So what it essentially enables is to debug a system. You switch on 100 lights. Some of the lights did not open because the bulb is maybe not existing. The circuit is there, the bulb is not existing. So what it will respond back is that resource not found. The bulb is the resource sitting on the server. The resource not found. But if maybe 95 lights, the bulbs were there, right? So they will not respond you back. But the 5 lights out of 100 lights, they will respond you back. And looking at which all lights responded you back, you can debug the system. Okay, these are the lights I need to fix. And you can debug the network. So Philips Light was very enthusiastic about it. But yes, of course, I received some stern opposition. I had to spend a lot of time trying to understand why they oppose, trying to convince them, and also at times trap them in their own arguments. So somebody is saying that if this doesn't work that, so I said, how you do that? I'll do that this way. But you only said that this is the definition of this, and this cannot happen. So these are some few tricks you learn through experience. So since then, London, then Toronto. Toronto was special because this is the first time I learned that there is something called ISOC fellowship. I say I learned because this whole path is a self-learning journey. Nobody helped me, even not my organization, because this is not my organization's traditional job, and you won't find many people who are aware of how things work there. I received the ISOC fellowship from there, and after that I moved to contribute to a little bit on IoT security, and we presented some drafts, but unfortunately I could not push them because I was too busy with this draft getting matured. Okay, but in May 2005 we did a breakthrough. What we did is we got, and now again this was also learning. I didn't know how IANA operates. Okay, but I requested for a number. I added an option to enhance the protocol. So I requested for a number. Now once you get into the IANA registry, and I got, and they have certain classifications, and that is a separate discussion, that how IANA numbering works. So when I got that number in the registry, that means nobody can deny me. So I've got into the internet numbering registry. And for those who are not aware, IANA is the organization that defines the port numbers that you use. Okay, so the global numbering system on the internet, all are maintained by IANA. Okay. Now after that, okay, so I received because of my past, maybe because of my past activities, I received another fellowship as a returning fellow in Prague, July 2015. And what is crucial is, in all these cases, I was struggling to get the budget from my company, because company also has certain limitations. Every organization has, and it is not a fault on part of the organization, right? Not every day. Now, all these cases, this ISOC fellowship actually helped me to keep the flame up, because it was a lone journey. It was not like other companies who get backed up by a bunch of fellow colleagues from all across the world, and to support or to raise their hands, like yes, we need this into the standard. So it was out of a 300,000 company, it was a single person moving there. Okay, even my co-authors were not able to come and join the meeting. So I had to. They bestowed all the responsibilities, and they put their faith in me to take this forward. Finally, August 2016, we could get the RFC done, and that is a milestone that we achieved. We are still working on some other problems. Hopefully we'll submit some more RFCs, and these are some of the drafts that we submitted on securing IoT devices. We had some specific use cases that you'll find in India. I'm not going to discuss all these things. This is not the stage for that. But what I found is that you really need a lobby to break the security stuff. Okay. Now, going back, okay, so this is actually our contribution. So you have DTLS as the conventional security mandated by the specs in for IoT. Okay, since it works on datagram transport, we devised something that intrinsically enables QAP to secure itself, and the performance chart actually shows that in terms of average latency on a lossy environment, we were actually doing better. And DTLS, in many cases, DTLS was not even able to establish the session, but we could do it successfully. We'll take it up again. We'll take it up again, but let us just wait for some time. Now, how ITF works, second part. So I don't need to explain this slide. Internet is all about protocols, and ITF essentially builds the protocols. What I want to, two things. One is the scope. So it is above the wire and below the application. So top is maybe your e-commerce application or whatever application, and at the bottom comes 3GPP, IEEE, like the Wi-Fi standard, the LTE standard. So these are all mandated standards. So there are two kinds of standards, as you all know, de facto and de jure. So 3GPP, IEEE, they should all go into the de jure because there are some mandate from the government. Okay, government agencies that will go by this and that. And IETF standards are standards because people use them. That is the term people use. So it is not really called a standard. RFC stands for request for comments, because historically, when the first things came into being, they were actually floated just to see how people react and whether people actually deploy them. So they were requests for comments, but then RFC became a brand name. Okay, so internet standards are from IETF are called RFCs. Okay. Now this is important. The process is meritocratic, democratic, informal, and pragmatic. Meritocratic, any specification that goes there should ideally become a standard based on its merit. That is the fundamental thing, and that is why when in IETF you introduce yourself, the ideal thing is not to speak about your organization. It is individual minds contributing to the community. Individual minds contributing to get the world connected through a huge distributed computing system that we call internet. Democratic. Democratic means there has to be a consensus. It cannot be somebody just pushing or bullying. Okay? The other thing is informal, because this consensus, there is another term added to this consensus thing, is rough consensus. So it is not that you have sheer number, sheer majority. So it is just like the mood of the house. So what happens is, like we have these two rows. So what happens in a typical IETF meeting, you have got mics over there, and people can come and put their comments. The speakers and the chairs will revert back. Even the chair can if the chair has to put a comment, he will also go to the mic and speak. The other thing is that when there is a matter of decision, right, whether somebody's proposal, it has to be taken or not, the process is through humming, not raising your hand. So you can consider it similar to what happens in our parliament, right? In many cases, the speaker says, those who in favor, please say aye, right? Okay? And those who not in favor, say no or whatever. So there the process is, so the chair will frame a question and the chair will say, those in favor of it, please hum. So you will hear a collective sound like this. Okay? Now there is a rationale behind it. Why you are not asked to raise the hands and count? Rather, it's a hum, and the chair has to judge the hum which is against and the hum which is for. Okay? Which is much weighted, and that is where from this rough consensus concept is coming, and the democratic concept is also coming, because if you raise your hand, maybe you are sitting next to your boss and you know that your boss does not like that proposal, but you like this proposal on typical technical merit, and if you just sit by next to your boss and you just say, your boss doesn't know. So you can put your opinion over there, right? And that is democracy. Okay? That is democracy. Okay? You should not be frightened of putting your opinion over there. So if tomorrow, I mean, Indian democracy, I think, just off track, I remember the Commonwealth Games when some person, I don't want to name, there were too much this thing of corruption and all these things going on in Commonwealth Games. One of the key organizers, he went to the podium after inauguration and he started to speak, and the whole stadium in Delhi, they started to woo. And that you can do in India. And that is why I was going through a study like the ratio of people who like their democracy and who doesn't like their democracy. India, despite all the problems, 78% was in favor of, they like the democracy that they have. Okay? In USA, on the contrary, the ratio was kind of 50-50. So people were not, 50% were not happy with the democracy, 50% were happy with the democracy. And that is why probably, despite all these religions and all these things, and despite having a divided independence, we are together. And we are the most successful democracy, I would say. Okay, so I think these are certain areas. So internet, it's a multi-vendor, multi-technology thing, right? So there are lots of problems, lots of layers of protocols. So what you have to do is you have to actually divide them into an area, into different areas. So ITF has defined some of the areas are shown here. This is not an exhaustive list. Under these areas, the working groups will work. So in those working groups, actual work will happen, okay? And area director will oversee how all the working groups are working, okay? So some of the notable RFCs, so whenever those who are not very familiar with ITF and standardization, I just want to tell them that when you switch on your, or when you put your browser and you start typing HTTP and all these things, you please bear this thing in your mind that you are actually using what is written in several documents. So when you are typing http:// you are using RFC, okay, RFC 1945 and then RFC 2616, whatever is written there. And now we have got HTTP 2 also, HTTP 1.1 and all this thing. Whatever is written there, so this typing http:// and something after that and pressing the enter, you are actually using all these documents over there. And rest, when your traffic is flowing to some e-commerce site or some government website or wherever, or YouTube, it is actually using RFC 793, which is TCP, right? Whatever is laid out there, IP, RFC 791, and RFC 1 was where the packet switching concept came from, okay? So we want to be there. Anyway, this is the first part of the presentation. Now the next part, why we want to be there. And now this one, I am not speaking on behalf of TCS. I am speaking as a volunteer. Okay. So the next part is India and ITF. We are talking that we need to contribute to standards, right? We should contribute to standard. Many people actually raised some security questions and all these things. But is that all? Just to secure our communication, just to secure what we do, just to know what these things are happening? Or is it something beyond? There is something more. Right. So let us first see India in ITF, what we're doing in ITF, right? Now, there is a page from the ITF chair, Eri Arco, right? In there, it's an incredible work. So you see all sorts of statistics there, okay? And this is a country-wise map on how many RFCs people have, right? The authors from different countries, right? I don't see my name, I mean India's name there, yeah? So how many countries are there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, okay, more than 10 countries, right? So we don't count in 10, okay? And I would like to draw your attention to the line, just to watch out, you know? This is from China. 2005, 0. And 2015, this was taken just 2 years. These statistics I took, I think 3 days back. Okay, this is 3 days back statistics, right? And you can see where it is. It is actually competing. If you just stand on that particular time, when I took the statistics, it is standing, I think, second to USA, right? Now, it is not that we don't have RFCs. We have authors from India who figure in RFCs, and we have authors with Indian address. There are, I think, about 160 RFCs, right? But these RFCs, almost all of these RFCs, thanks to CEDAT and ISC Bangalore, they are taking up this, they have recently taken up the charge. But most of these RFCs are coming actually from people working either from Cisco India or working from Huawei India, right? Juniper, like that. Now, I'm not saying anything against, that is why, that is what has given us wealth, because people have thought of us worth outsourcing their R&D activities, and that is why we have grown. The economy has grown. So there is nothing to say anything against that. But one thing is that when these are coming from these companies, even if you consider TCS, when something will come from TCS, of course TCS will try to protect its business interest, right? It will be driven by the business interest. So most of the things coming from Huawei are actually in the routing area because that is their core business. And now you will understand why they can design their system and route things to China, because they are now the big boss of the routing area. They are controlling things, right? Similarly, there are other companies, and Cisco is everywhere. Cisco starting, and Huawei actually is trying to catch up Cisco, right? It is a Chinese version of American Cisco, right? So, of course, we have people there, so that means that it is not that people from India don't know idea. People from India cannot publish RFC, but the only thing is that they have learned about this when they have worked with companies who have been traditionally contributing to IETF, who have been traditionally driving how internet should work. When I say traditionally, I consider China also, because it has already been more than a decade. China is contributing, right? We are not there, okay? And if you look into the academia of Europe, or even MIT, right, from USA, they are also contributing, right? So we are nowhere figuring out there. Probably because we don't feel the necessity, or our community is not aware of what can be achieved. And that is the key essence that I want to catch up in the presentation, in the rest of the few slides. So now we try to, or we somehow, by God's grace or whomsoever grace, we stand out a little bit as an exception, because everything is battery is low, so we have got some energy constraint. Right. Now, let us first understand how to contribute. Simple thing. Okay. It is not a big deal. So I am not an alien, and neither these people from India who have contributed are aliens, or neither are we superhumans or anything like that. Okay. It is only about learning and knowing the things, right? What you need to do is, first you identify few topics that you want to work on, okay? There is a page in IETF where you can get a list of the working groups, because working groups are the areas where things actually happen, okay? Where people submit their technical contribution. You go to the working group, you will see lots of working names, and the names, the abbreviations themselves are quite explanatory of what they are after. You can click on that, you can look into their charters, right? Okay, even if you are not working, you want to work on something future. You say, okay, why should I work for something for which there is immediate product coming out? I want to work on something futuristic. That will give me journal publication. That will give me good publication in many of the top level conferences. I'll gain recognition in research community. What recognition shall I get just by contributing to working group? Then just change that W into R in that link. So it becomes RG, research group. So ITF, side by side the working group, there are research groups, okay? Who are working on, there are plenty of research groups like information centric network, Cisco and all, they are really working on there, because if tomorrow information centric network comes up, they want to get the cream out of there. Then there is how, I don't remember the exact name, but there is how artificial intelligence can be integrated into protocol stack. Okay, there are research groups on that. There are research groups on thing to thing, that is typical problems, futuristic problems for IoT. There are several such research groups. There is a research group on how you can make internet low latency, because after this IoT, people are actually talking about low latency internet or tactile internet. So something like I sit here, I have got a steering, I don't need an automated car. I have a steering, or I have an app in the in my mobile phone. So from that app, I switch on my car, okay, and I just drive my car using in real time. So the reaction time is 1 millisecond. Can I guarantee that with current internet? No. But that is something is being envisioned. It is called tactile internet. Tactile, the sense of tactility.
Is it the technology that Google is doing, self-driven car?
No. It is not. That is what I'm saying. It is not the car is deciding. Car is a dumb. Car is dumb. Car has nothing. It has got only the actuating components. It is myself having a mobile phone, just like a video game. I am driving the car. Real time, I am looking at the mirrors. It is all about augmented reality, virtual reality. And it can also get extended to medical science. Now we have robotic surgery. The Da Vinci robots are there to help surgeons to do precision surgery, but in that case the surgeon has to sit next to the robot or close to the robot, connected over the wire. Now imagine a situation how India can benefit. In Jharkhand, in western part of West Bengal, in several parts in the maybe in our Himalayan belt, in Sundarbans, there are islands in Sundarbans, okay, where you cannot easily reach. You can reach through internet. You can give the best possible surgery if you can set up a robotic infrastructure there. The surgeon may be sitting in the AIIMS somewhere in mainland India and doing the surgery. It will be a huge benefit. But yes, this is futuristic. But we have to dream. We have so many difficulties in terms of terrains, in terms of several other things. The internet is actually a tool to bridge these gaps. You can detect readily whether a village is under epidemic and send remotely enable the panchayats to get the treatment done. How can you do without advancing your network? Okay, so tactile internet is a concept that has come. It is again University of Dresden in Germany and also Vodafone in Germany. They are driving it. But yes, this is a new area that people are working on. So you identify your area, you find the working group or the research group. For a few days, you register to the mailing list. Everything is free. You just need an internet connection. you follow the discussion, what is happening. You read the draft, what people are trying to say. What will benefit is that in many cases your professors will, or your superiors will not be able to tell you what is the real problem that the world needs to solve or the industry needs to solve. Because in India we do not have this ecosystem. We do not have this ecosystem of bridging academia with industry. In many cases we take up imaginary problems, as Anand was mentioning. You get to know what is the problem the industry big shots are trying to solve. Now when you see that some industry big shot is talking about something, you have to keep in mind that they must have foreseen something. They are not talking in thin air, right? They must have foreseen something and they have some implementations already going on. That is why they are coming here. If you do not catch up, you will lose the pace in future, okay? Right? So once you are done, you can, if there are online resources from where there are several options by which you can submit a draft. It can be written as XML, you have Word templates given, and there are many others. So you can do that, okay? It is not that difficult. And you can, just like you upload in EDAS or EasyChair your conference papers, you can upload your document into the ITA website. Got my point? Okay. And these drafts, you need not always think that, okay, I don't have a protocol right now, so how can I submit a draft? Yes, you can. You can find out the best practice. Just the way you do a survey of state of the art for writing your paper. You do a survey of the state of the art, right? So that is actually what are the best practices that has been taken up. You try to profile that. You do it in a larger scale. You submit that. You say, if you find a gap, you tell them, see, you are telling all these technologies, what I have done a survey, and this is what I have found. I am submitting a draft, and this is what should be done. You need not always be the generator of the technology, but you should be aware of the use cases. You should be able to dictate the use case at least. I am giving you one example. In 3GPP, they have this thing called channel models, right? So the receiver behavior changes depending on the channel, the kind of channel the mobile phone is going to operate, and so your system has to be compliant with these channel models. Now when for 4G these LTE channel models came, the developed nations, they gave the channel model, the rural channel model, in which they considered it as a situation where they will have bullet trains going. It is a sparse environment, high-speed trains moving. Compared to bullet trains, our rural model is bullock cart. And you see the divide. So there are organizations in India who actually have flexed their muscles and they have incorporated this channel model, right? Just telling them to, no, we need to support. For example, this prepaid mode of mobile phone. India has a huge contribution there. To tell them that this is the most viable and this is the most viable option that will give you most of the one of the biggest consumer base. So you have to support it. So even if you see that you are not able to address, you are not able to contribute technically, try to contribute in terms of use cases. Try to contribute in terms of problem statements. Okay? And if you know the problem, you will know the solution. The first thing in any, since most of you are students, if you are writing a paper, a good journal paper always stands on the shoulder of a good problem definition. If you are not able to articulate your problem in the introduction, the reviewer will not go through the rest of the section of the paper. That is how review happens. So think of it in the same way. Okay? You try to define your problem definition. Okay. Now, internet has an economics in it. And in outside world, even in China, there has been a lot of work going on in internet economics, right? And it is quite different because in economics involves the products and the interaction of the market bearers, right? In internet, the good thing is your position, your location, your distance, they do not matter. they do not matter your economic development around internet, right? And also, sitting even at a rural corner, you can reach the whole world, right? That is the beauty of internet. Now, how it enables growth? On top, there is dissemination of innovation. Even TCP was part of some R&D, right? And then there is this economics of scale. Why economics of scale? If you standardize, if you go by standardization, you ensure interoperability, interconnectivity, compatibility with the existing system, you get market access, you are quick to the market, and your compliance. You can say that I am compliant to, so just like we have ISH hub, okay? And that leads to economic growth, because all these things, they are actually part of your business acumen, okay? And on top of that, there is this dissemination of innovation, and it is actually a two-way interaction is there, okay? That is why there is a lot of scope for economic growth. Now, what it takes to win standardization? What it takes to win this standardization? Because, you know, if you look into TCP IP, why TCP became the de facto standard of internet? WSI was a much better mathematically modeled standard. TCP became the standard. You know, Kashin is actually, he actually cursed TCP. He said that TCP is going to die out. But in the same article where he said that TCP is going to die out, he said
10 minutes.
Yeah.
Can you open for some questions? 5 minutes.
5 minutes. Yeah. So what he said that the rationale for TCP/IP's ongoing success is fundamental. It works. Fundamentally, you should have a working system. Okay. It is available on numerous hardware platforms. It is already implemented. So it is not the other way. You make the standard, then come to the product. No, you make a product. For example, the Apple uses HTTP live streaming. So whenever you are doing YouTube in Apple devices, it is using HTTP live streaming. It is not yet a standard, but it is deployed all Apple's devices. Even YouTube deploys it. It is not yet a standard. It is the draft is I think in 23rd version. Okay, but it will become a standard, and it will become, there will be several Apple proprietary things going into it. Okay. So some tools that want, so product developed before standard is created, and you need not solve every problem on earth. Try to solve incrementally and create your product. Try to ease out little bit, and that will give you the standard. And it should be easy to implement. And that is why our solution actually needed so few lines of code. Now, this is an example. Are we really serious about standardization? And this is an example from our music. We are fond of Hindustani classical, right? There is also Carnatic. Now, if you look at that, this is the Western. There is only one thing: staff notation. If you try to annotate the music in Hindustani style, you have Bhatkhande system, you have Palushkar system. Rabindranath Tagore has his own system, and if someone is learning with Pandit Ajay Chakravarti, he has his system. So we are not really good at standardizing. Actually, I got it from somebody's book, somebody's copy. He's a student with Pandit Ajay Chakravarti. So I took his copy and I just said, let me click one of your this thing. I have to make a presentation, right? So, how does it boost the socio-economic growth? Now I want to make this thing. So, you know, the ROI, return of investment, it is equivalent to education and training that you give to people of your organization. You see, there are theses, okay, which actually talks about whether standardization actually helps the business. Now, if you have in a multi-party environment, you have conflicting standards, whether there will be any coalition, it is an open question. But if you have standards from multiple parties aiming at a common business interest, it boosts your business. It boosts your overall this thing. And the other thing that I'll tell everybody to be aware of is the standards essential patents. You patent your stuff and standardize it. That gives you business acumen. solve problems for India? Because we are the son of the soil. We know the problems better. People from outside, they will not know what are the real problems. Okay. In many of the cases, there are several other things that I wanted to say, but let me refrain from there. But what is important is build an ecosystem. Why you build an ecosystem? Because that ecosystem makes you strong. That ecosystem makes you strong. Join hands. Okay? So find common business interest. Standardize on your strong areas. Address the global community. It should not be confined to your thing. Take advantage of open standards. Contribute to ITF. That is how you can become a global player. So the bottom line is, if you are influential and knowledgeable, you can influence the procurement policies of the government as well. You can tell the government, don't use this webcam. Don't allow this webcam to be procured. You can dictate. Government knows that this man goes to the standard. He knows how things happen. I have to listen. Okay? If you are not knowledgeable, it will not happen. So, but we have to be meritocratic. Now the last thing, what we should expect, government has some role to play. What government should do is probably a pool of existing key patents along with licensing conditions should be prepared. So, if tomorrow I am going to come with a standard, I am going to productize it, I should not be bothered by unnecessary litigations. Many Indian startups have suffered that in the mobile phone domain. Many Indian organizations, including Micromax. There are several instances people didn't know that they are infringing. So that is something that has to be taken care of, and there has to be a support mechanism so that an entrepreneur will be encouraged to go into, take that risk. And there has to be capacity building, create technically world-class people who should be also aware of how to protect the IPR and how to leverage on IPR. And while you say make in India, you also make for India. Okay? Because that will give you the edge over this thing. Okay? Now, should we imitate, this is the last thing I want to address, should we imitate the Chinese model? The answer is no. Because in China, you have a totalitarian system. Even the competition between the corporates is managed. China delayed its 3G deployment just to ensure that TD-SCDMA, the protocol standardized for 3G communication in China, gets matured. It told China Mobile to take up the responsibility and get that push to the standard. So it delayed just to ensure that my manufacturing and everything gets in line with the standard and I can dominate this thing. But that has a price to pay. When you start confining everything within your geography, in internet it does not work, today's world, because compatibility is the key thing. TD-SCDMA, nobody talks about today. But they are trying to take advantage of LTE TDD version, time division duplexing version. Now what they are saying that, okay, China Mobile, I have given you this advantage, now I want to give Huawei the advantage. Let Huawei flourish. Okay? Tomorrow I'll say let ZTE flourish. Okay, you have already done this. Now stop. Please, it is like this Bahubali, okay, movie. Okay, Dhanush start, then Bhalla you start, then you start, and collectively you win. Okay, for us it is a different thing. We are a fragmented market. We are an open market. We want to go along collaborating with the world. We are not competing. We have never closed our thing. Okay. What is essential is that you should contribute in your own area, but do not be too much competitive. Okay. Contribute in your own area. Find your strong area, then collaborate. First, collaborate amongst yourself. You create your own community, and then the garden will flourish. It is just like a garden where every flower has its own zone, where that zone becomes beautiful, and collectively all the beautiful zones coming together creates the garden. Let us take that approach. And let us not hesitate. So there is an economic policy possibility. This economic growth can, if it is unleashed, it can actually make us really good. I mean, a big competitor, and we should be able to tell everybody that this is how technology should work. And we have some best of the minds in our country. Let us take advantage of that, and let us do it for the benefit of the whole region, I'd say. I mean, being from India, the advantage is that you can actually lead the whole subcontinent together. Okay, so that was the thing. Think about Indian problems. Think about Indian problems. Think about the problems that is next door to you, and try to solve that. Think of the problems that your organization is facing, right? Try to solve that.